May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God. Amen. Acceptance, belonging. These are words that are used frequently today, everywhere from psychology to religion to Oprah's programming to conversations about bullying. We know today, more than ever, that acceptance is a key factor in our happiness and well-being. The experience of feeling known and that who I am is okay. I belong. People value me. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Brené Brown is an author and a research professor at the University of Houston. She's become well known for her work regarding belonging and vulnerability. She says that fitting in is not the same as belonging. In fact, she writes, and this is a quote, that fitting in is the greatest barrier to belonging. Fitting in, I've discovered during the past decade of research, is assessing situations and groups of people and then twisting yourself into a human pretzel in order to get them to let you hang out with them. Belonging is something else entirely. It's showing up and letting yourself be seen and known as you really are. Love of gourd painting, intense fear of public speaking, and all. The author of Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, Robert Fulghum, puts it this way. We are all a little weird, and life is a little weird. And when we find someone whose weirdness is compatible with ours, we join up with them and fall into mutually satisfying weirdness and call it love. But the world we live in is an imperfect one. And the reality is that sometimes our most valiant, brave efforts at trying to share the weird, quirky, or different parts of ourselves are not met with kindness or acceptance. In the movie Pariah, Alike is a high school junior who comes from a well-to-do, though not perfect, family in inner city New York. Alike's parents love her deeply and want what's best for her, but they have a certain view of who they think Alike is. Her mom buys her a pink, ruffly blouse and wants her to dress more feminine, when in reality, Alike is more comfortable in loose-fitting clothes adorned with sports team logos or polo shirts. Alike's father makes good-natured comments about Alike getting a boyfriend, but Alike isn't interested in boys. She can't share her true self with her family and does her best just to fit in, which, if we think back to Brené Brown's research, we know that fitting in is not a recipe for happiness or fulfillment. Alike becomes like a chameleon, trying to fit in at school, trying to fit in at home, all the while becoming more and more desperate just to be who she really is. In an explosive family fight, Alike finally declares the truth, forcing her parents to hear her for the first time. I'm gay. But she does not find belonging. Her parents don't open their arms in acceptance. Instead, Alike's mother flies at her, almost like a knee-jerk reaction, slamming Alike into a wall. Alike hits her head, and bleeding, she leaves immediately to go stay with a friend. A short time later, while staying with the same friend, Alike learns that she has an opportunity to go away to Berkeley for an early college program for writing. This is her chance to stop trying to fit in and start to belong. her opportunity to find the acceptance that her own family would not give her. Before she gets on the bus to leave for Berkeley, Alike goes to see her mother at work to say goodbye. Her mom is on her lunch break, and she's sitting in the break room, and this is the first time they've seen each other since the big family fight. They exchange an awkward, "Hi, how have you been?" And in a heartfelt moment of goodbye and forgiveness, Alike says, "Mom, I love you." Her mother doesn't speak, and Alike repeats herself, "I love you, Mom." Her mother gathers her things, including the Bible that she had been reading during her lunch break, and as she gets up, she says, "I'll be praying for you," and she walks away. We all know something of the love between parents and children. What a powerful force and a strong bond that can be. And this makes watching these scenes between Alike and her mother all the more painful. And how much greater is God's love for us? A love beyond our imagining. This great love, this word, this light of all people came to us and was rejected by his human family. Thinking about this and about Alike's story made me wonder, how great was Jesus' suffering for not being accepted by his own people? For Jesus came to his own home, and his own people did not accept him. Jesus, who told parables to explain the wild extravagance of God's love, a love that would welcome home a wayward prodigal son. Jesus, the Word, who in the beginning was with God, the true light of all people, who came to be with us. Jesus, the divine love of God in human flesh, eating with and sharing with and welcoming all. This Jesus was rejected again and again to the extent of being crucified on a cross. He came to his own home, and his own people did not accept him. I suspect that we aren't any better at accepting Jesus today. And I don't mean in the "have you accepted Jesus into your life" kind of way. I mean when it comes to choosing daily between the ways of the world and Jesus. We are more likely to pick the way of the world, and in so doing, we reject Jesus over and over again. And it's not surprising because it's just so much easier. We choose the convenience of selfishness over the costliness of love. It's like the brightness of the light of Christ is overwhelming, and rather than embracing it and letting our eyes adjust, we cling to darkness and shadows. We look away from injustice. We reject the light of the world for sources of manufactured light, sources that we have created or that have been sold to us. When I think of the difficulty of accepting Jesus, I often think of my dad. He lives in Tampa and loves to rollerblade on the ocean front early in the morning, like 5 a.m., before he goes to work. In the course of his daily morning exercise, he got to know a homeless person, Art, who would always be sitting in the same spot every morning. He got in the habit of bringing Art coffee every day. And when winter rolled around, my dad would leave his car running while he was out rollerblading and let Art sit in it, keys and all, so that Art could be warm for the next hour. I think this is one of the craziest and most beautiful things I've ever heard. According to the logic of the world and our tendency to put ourselves, our security, our possessions first, it makes almost no sense. It's right up there with turning the other cheek and going the extra mile. And I eventually met Art. He's a nice person. But I have to be honest and say that I would have a hard time letting a stranger sit in my car, keys and all, to keep warm or for any purpose. But if I pull out my WWJD bracelet from the 90s and wonder, what would Jesus do? I think I know the answer. And I hate it because my mind screams that letting a stranger sit in your car unattended is foolish. And yet, then I remember the words of 1 Corinthians that the wisdom of the world is foolishness with God. My dad is just as flawed as you and I, but in this instance, he was able to see Art as a person, as a fellow human being, and to accept him. In cups of coffee and in offering a warm place to sit, he honored the dignity of a person who had been rejected and passed by so many. And in so doing, I believe that he did no less than welcome and accept Jesus. There is a tension we live in when we accept Jesus into our lives. We will always be called to do things that are kind of crazy and very beautiful. We will spend our lives seeking to live out our baptisms and grow in discipleship in a world that largely rejects the light. We will struggle with our own tendency to reject the light, our desire to turn down the wattage, embracing the light only as far as is comfortable, only as far as is sensible. We will constantly be faced with new and difficult opportunities to put ourselves aside and to accept Jesus time and time again in the faces of the oppressed, the marginalized, the misfits, in Art, in Alike, in you, and in me, so that when he comes to his people, we might accept him. Amen.